So I was telling you, I just rewatched the movie, and I'd seen it in the theater when it came out, and it's...
Are you sure you were old enough to watch it?
No, it's been 25 years.
Oh,
Really? They told me that. I didn't believe that, but...
Do you guys remember the first time you met? At which part of the process?
I do.
Do you?
Remember. Do you remember?
No, tell me. Help me.
It was.
Well, I mean, it was at the very beginning when we sat down.
It was the very first time we met. Was we were going to sit down with Ridley, just you and me and Ridley, and go through the script and give our thoughts. And so we sit down, and I had gone through the script and thought, okay, well, this one I'm not going to bring. I'll bring that up on the set. That can wait. And this one, maybe if I make it like a joke, he'll take it seriously. And this one, maybe I could make him think it's his idea. Like all this schemy, so nobody feels offended and likes me. So we sit down. I don't know if you remember this. We sit down, and Susan's in the first or second scene or whatever. And so she goes, this first line of mine, I think we should lose that line. And then on the next page, maybe we could move it around like that. And I was just like, what? People can say what they think, and what? And I look at Ridley, and he's just going, oh yeah.
Well, I remember having a conversation and saying, where are they from? It doesn't even say in the script, like, where are they from? Because, you know, we have to figure out what accents we're using. And he goes, well, just use the accent you have. And I was like, Ridley, remember that? I said, this is not a Southern accent, you know. We have to decide, like, and how long does it take them? There's no, you know, it's different if it takes them a week. You could maybe think if you stay up for a week, you'd go off a cliff and think that's a good idea. But if you've got a month and a half, you have time to rest, maybe it's not going to. So we have to decide these things. And so we had a lot of that discussion, too, just trying to clarify, you know.
That's such a nice British way of handling it. Like, just use the accent you have. That's fine.
Well, because obviously he couldn't even hear we had an accent, but it was not the right one.
So he was collaborative, though. He was open.
He was uncharacteristically collaborative, and I remember one time when I always had said to him, you know, it's really a problem for me. This woman's been raped. She's killed someone because. And then there was this thing in the script about her, you know, putting on lingerie with the boyfriend and singing and having a marriage and all that. I mean, like, I just don't understand how that can happen without my having some kind of a breakdown if I have sex with him at that point, which I'm happy to do. But then the 2 seconds later, she comes back and says the money's been stolen, so that's another thing. So I said, if you want to have two of those together, and he said no. So then we came up with well, what would I shoot while I'm cutting to their bed scenes, you know, their sex scenes, and you know, to just and trying to figure out what that would be. And so he completely threw out, you know, one whole section and just kind of improvised this other thing, which was very brave. And then also the shot where I said, you know, we have been in this car for so long. Couldn't we have like some little grace note of just, you know, like almost she's tripping and, you know, Gina's sleeping and she gets out and, you know, which is an interesting idea. But when you throw out ideas as an actor, it doesn't mean that you're thinking, well, it's going to take 7 hours to light the desert. You know, you just make suggestions. Some of them are taken, most of them are not, blah, 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 blah. And he did it, and it took 7 hours. And that scene where there's no dialogue, and then she wakes up and comes out. You know what I mean? So that was major, major. You have to be very confident to, as a director, I think, to be able to just go, okay, let's try that, you know, and also have enough space for it. And he did do that. I mean, he bowed to us a few times in just clarifying specific things like T-shirts you were wearing and.
Right. But it is a sign of mastery and confidence that you know exactly what you're doing, and therefore you can take other suggestions and weigh them instead of feeling threatened, like, no, don't mess with my vision, you know.
And also he would do things like when it would say they drive into a gas station, which normally would be you drive into a gas station, but Ridley would have the stunt person peeling in backwards with a guy that's a muscle guy and and smudge pots going and you know,
welding some or something.
And so just the simplest little thing he would give this really interesting take to. Which
we're driving and a crop duster goes by and you know, that was fun.
But you know, I've interviewed him a few times and he always stresses to me that the hardest part for him is casting, and then once he has his cast, he trusts them and he considers them partners. So when you guys were coming up for the roles, I think I read, Geena, that you had even thought about playing Louise at some point, right?
When I first read it, I showed it to my acting coach. This is before I've been considered or anything. We decided that I should try for Louise, who's a more sane, mature part. He said, "You're old enough now that I think you should play that part." And so when I met with Ridley to try to sell him, I was pitching that I should be Louise. I had all these arguments in a year. It was a year after I first read it. Years worth of passion about I have to play Louise. And about 20 minutes in, he says, "So just to be clear, you wouldn't play Thelma?" And I said, You know what's interesting? As I've been talking, I don't buy my argument. I actually think I should play Thelma.
I could just change right here on a diamond.
And then I just made up all this shit about why I had to be Thelma, and thank God it all worked out.
Well, what was it about the script? I mean, we all know what the movie turned out to be, but you don't always know that in the beginning of a project. But what was that when you guys first read the script? What was it that?
Well, I never heard what you thought of.
There were a lot of questions I had about things, but I just thought the opportunity you never get to be in a film with another woman, hardly ever, and you never get to be friends with the woman. If you are in a film with another woman, then you automatically are competitive and hate each other for whatever reason. She's young, you're old, anything they can figure out. So to even get a shot to do a movie with another woman was a big deal. Ridley's an amazing director, but also it just seemed like it would be fun to be outlaws. I mean, I wasn't taking it super seriously. There were a lot of things that I was questioning about how things. I didn't want to make a revenge movie. I said, I'm not interested in that. What to me seems different is that she questions, she wants to understand why men would do this, why. And so we kind of imposed that on it and added some dialogue and stuff because I just said, I'm just not interested in, being Schwarzenegger or...
Right.
But mostly it was a chance to work with Geena, a chance to work with Ridley, taking the summer off with the kids and having
kids
fun.
Came.
Yeah, they
fun.
were there
and,
just having fun. It motivates me a lot and I thought it would be fun, but I definitely didn't think we were going to get that much reaction, good and bad.
Oh, no. Nobody did. No, I guarantee you. Nobody, the writer... Really, nobody thought it would get the reaction that it did.
It's so hard to imagine. It's hard to imagine not that making that movie, I guess, and not knowing. I mean, when did you first start realizing that this was...
When it came out.
Really?
When the reaction happened, when it came out, is when we realized it. We had no clue.
That's true.
No, we had no idea. And it was overwhelming. And it was also, I think maybe a lot of people who are watching this weren't around to know what the reaction was, but maybe you'll explain to them. But it was huge. It was like massive. We were on the cover of Time magazine in like 5 seconds about why it strikes a nerve and like very negative editorials. Oh my God, now the world is ruined. The women have guns.
See, I don't remember the negative stuff at all. That's crazy.
A lot of negative
No, it's all about romanticizing suicide and
it's a man-hating movie.
Yeah.
It's all about putting men down.
Well, we thought we were kind of doing a Butch Cassidy, kind of a romantic, or Jules and Jim or something like that, not making some kind of statement. And really, I mean, they only picked on guys with an enormous amount of gold jewelry. They weren't like after everyone, right?
No.
It was like...
No. So when people would say at the time, what about the portrayals of the men? I would say, well, look, there's 7 of them, and one is a total hero, Harvey Keitel, and Brad Pitt steals the money, but it was worth it. And so they run the gamut. And it was a long explanation. And then when I heard Callie Curry, the writer, interviewed, and they said, what is this about? Do you think it's a male bashing movie? And she says, so what? And I'm like, that's a better answer. She's like, this happened, women get, horrible portrayals in most movies all the time, negative or stereotyped. I don't care.
Right. Well, we have to talk about the Brad Pitt of it all, since this was the movie that turned him into the Brad Pitt we know today. I read, Geena, that you helped secure his place in the film,
No.
or at least you gave your thumbs up.
I weighed in.
Yes,
I weighed in.
that's good.
Yes, because they wanted me to. There was 5 candidates for the part, and they wanted me to read with them, so I could see whatever and chemistry. But then they didn't ask me afterwards what I thought. Ridley and the casting director started talking, and I'm packing up my stuff, listening, and I said, should I? Do you want to hear what I thought? And they were like, oh, God, yes, of course. And I said, the blonde one? Hello?
It's the only time they watched the dailies at real speed was when that scene was on. We didn't quite know why they were coming back from lunch so late, but they were watching that scene.
It's a very sexy
without
scene.
sound.
Without sound? God.
Just to make sure everything was okay.
Right.
But all of our scenes they did, you know, fast during lunch. The thing that's amazing about Brad, and what I think you really see in the other scenes, not with us, but when he's making fun of taunting the husband and everything, Johnny Depp, all these, there's a few of these guys that are so beautiful, and yet they played characters. I mean, they had the balls and the curiosity to not just coast in on their good looks, and they really welcomed and approached a lot of their leading men as character parts.
It's true.
Jimmy Spader's another one, you know, and so I think that's where he got this base. I mean, when you look at him, he's like a good-looking, really good-looking American sexy boy, but I mean, he could have gone the way of a TV series kind of thing, but there's something about him that knew how to take that and make it really interesting, even if it wasn't indicated. You know, you could tell already from the other part of the movie that he was something special, I think.
Do you remember what was maybe the hardest? What was the hardest scene for you guys to film?
I mean, I'd say the hardest one was your rape. Was
Well, that was a
definitely
hard scene,
not
right.
exactly a day at the beach. That was hard.
That was hard.
That was a
hard.
big
But when I read the script, the hardest thing I thought was going to be laughing hysterically, like crying, laughing. And there's a scene that I'm supposed to be doing that, and I'm like, how do you do that? I mean, especially take after take. So I got this idea that I'd get a little bit drunk. And I thought, this is working well, glug glug. And so we did the scene, and it worked. But then I was so drunk, I couldn't shoot that afternoon. I had to go sleep in my trailer.
I don't even remember that.
Yeah.
That was so unprofessional of you. I don't
was,
even remember.
wasn't it? Yeah.
Don't even. I forgive you.
Thank you.
It worked.
Thank
It worked. That was so methody.
It
That was like a De Niro thing. Pacino.
Yeah,
You were
yeah.
like right there with De Niro, Pacino. Ah, man, I wish I'd thought of that.
Right?
Damn.
I feel like you can't sort of fake the kind of chemistry you guys have in the film. You know, maybe you can. You guys are both very talented actresses.
No, I don't know. I don't know. That's a lot of energy. I mean, I think that for me, it was based a lot on just mutual respect. She's so smart and so professional, and her timing is so good. And you, especially if you're doing a two-hander, you're so dependent on the other person that when they are there for you and you don't have to worry about them, especially if you're not having to. You know, because sometimes people do show up that are not prepared to work, or, you know, don't have a sense, whatever the problem or difficulty might be. And when you get somebody that you can just make mistakes 100% and you can really fly with it, then, I mean, you're so grateful that in itself is something that bonds you, you know, because you're so dependent on each other as much as the crew. So I think that more than just a moment it was pretty clear from the beginning that there wasn't going to be, I guess what we could have had happen, which sometimes happen, not necessarily with women, but even with guys, is that can be sabotaging that goes on if you're in a two-hander, you know, and it was clear from the beginning that we were going to put our energy into just having fun and doing the best we could and not play games or any of that stuff, right? So I think that was also my style and that's her style, so it worked out perfectly.
Oh, thank goodness.
You said every once in a while she'd say, see how much fun it is to work with women? I was like, yeah, I do.
In a sea of very macho men, cigar chomping, T-shirts around their heads in the desert, bare-chested, going into the sunset.
Macho
yeah, it was very.
Oh, you guys said you wanted to do this because the chance to work with another woman. You know, there's been so much talk everywhere about females in Hollywood and women in movies. how much do you think things are better, or how have they gotten better?
I will give this over to my partner here,
Oh,
who has
please.
all the studies.
I know.
Oh, because I actually know the
I
answer
know
to
you
that
do.
question. Yeah, you know, as partly as a result of being in Thelma and Louise, the reaction was so eye-opening, and I think from then on I chose roles based on like, what are the women in the audience going to think about this character? But then when I had a daughter and I started watching kids entertainment with her, I was like, what? What are we doing? This is the 21st century, and there's far more male characters than female characters. So
Even in animation.
even in anime, even in
where you could draw some more girls.
draw them, you know, preschool shows even. Teletubbies is gender balanced, I want to point out. It seemed like nobody was noticing this, and so I decided I wanted the data, so I went overboard. My institute has sponsored the largest amount of research ever done on gender depictions. The ratio of male to female characters has been exactly the same since 1946. So even the question, things have, or the assumption, you know, you said, have things changed? Most people say, things are better now, right? I mean, there's been, you know, the Hunger Games, there's been Bridesmaids, so it must be better. But it's not yet. It will be,
Right.
and I think very soon, based on the reaction that we get. But it's not better yet.
Right. Is the answer to be more on the developmental level as far as shepherding in projects?
Well, we were talking about this earlier, that there's so many women now with great production companies, and you know, Reese Witherspoon, and developing great stuff, having things written, which helps a lot. For the on-screen part, I found it very effective to talk directly to the creators. Instead of trying to educate the public and get them to demand more female characters, I just talk directly with them and say, hey, in a private way, do you want to know, you know, these numbers and stuff. But the other thing I've started doing is I started my own film festival, because I decided the person who starts a festival doesn't always have to be a man or someone named Robert
That's true.
De Niro or Redford. Yes. So, so it champions women and diversity in media, and the point is not to just say, "Hey, isn't it nice?" to show how commercial that it can be. And we have unique in the world of festivals. We offer guaranteed distribution to the winners,
Really?
theatrical,
That's
TV,
amazing.
and DVDs.
I mean, and that's where change has to happen, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it just sort of like, instead of just, you know, talking about it over and over again, actually, you know,
Right.
it's very inspiring to see
Right.
women like Reese Witherspoon, people who are deciding what projects it is that they
The
want
last
to
three
do.
movies I've done have all been directed by women. So there are women somewhere that are directing, or else they're just in my life. But I think that also, I think you have to also ask yourself. It's good to get the numbers up, but I wouldn't do most of the stuff guys are doing. So you also want. I think that what we're getting when you have all these fabulous, funny women, also getting films and telling stories, and that to make sure they're well done and to make sure people are enjoying them, and not just that we focus on how many we're doing, but it should really be something, a story that you want to hear, that you want to tell. And when you pick up the newspaper, they're not all about white male heterosexuals of a certain age. So there are those stories in the world, you know, and it's just a question of finding people that connect to them and telling them. And that's really great, I think, that there's so many more writers. And there are, as you say, women with production companies that are doing a lot more.
Right.
It is.
Right.
It's good to see. I was wondering if you think that if the script for Thelma and Louise came around today, would anybody, or maybe this happened at the time, said, we're not sure about this ending?
No,
Tell about the ending.
What about the ending?
They didn't really have
Well,
to
when I
say.
met with Ridley, I said, so really, are you going to, you know, don't have me do this, and then when you test it and everybody gets bummed out, you're going to reshoot and we're going to be alive after all, you know.
Yeah.
And he said, well, I can tell you that you will definitely die, but I'm not sure about the other one. Meaning
I know.
this one.
This one.
He
How would
said,
that
you might
work?
push her out of the car or something, but I think we shot that scene at the very end of the very end of the very end of the very end.
Is that right?
The last shot as the
yeah.
sun went down.
not-
We only had like one take, and for the actual scene, the helicopters had many takes, but we only had. And I think by then we'd earned that ending, you know. But in the beginning, when I met with him, because I said, just tell me now, you know, is this going to be really hard? And of course, when he freeze frames that, and the music is very up, it's it's a redemptive kind of positive, in a way, strangely romanticized Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid ending, as opposed to a bummer. And that was Ridley to thank for that, you know. I never imagined that it was going to feel that way, really.
It's an incredibly emotional scene.
Yeah.
You know, just saying, let's keep going.
I know.
You know.
Oh, I know. Well, it was actually very emotional for me and maybe us that it's the last scene in the movie. We have like 20 minutes to get it, and we're going to say goodbye to each other. And so, meta, you know, so when I turned and looked at her and realized this whole experience is over, I felt really sad.
And we used to have a lot of dialogue at the end. And then when we were talking about it, we were like, really, by then I think they'd be finishing each other's sentence. We don't have to say 2 pages of dialogue. And so in taking that and putting it over one of the chase scenes where we're screaming that dialogue, I think that helped too, that it was so... it was concentrated into really what probably at that point would have happened, and not going on and on made it more powerful. And but it was fun. And then I said, I'm just going to grab her, all right? And he said, okay.
Really?
Yeah.
Like the embrace at the end, you mean?
The kiss, the big dance, the kiss.
It's a wonderful moment.
Yeah.
I can't believe you guys waited to the very end. But also, like, every time I've seen the movie a bunch of times now, but I also still can't believe that's the ending of the movie. It feels like a very brave choice. I feel like maybe today even somebody would have said, let's have them roll out or rappel down the canyon or something.
I'd be worried. You mentioned that earlier, that I don't know if they'd let you do that ending now. They'd test it and see that people were...
Well, would they have made Butch Cassidy now and ended that way? I mean, they would let the guys go out that way. It's it's a conventional movie ending. It's not the first time that we've seen, you know, people don't want to compromise. They don't want to, they want freedom, you know, that whole thing. And so, I mean, I don't know.
It's like a real classic Western trope.
Yeah.
It's perfect for the bit. And you're talking about the dialogue that matches everything. It's so sparse and, you know, bare. I think that makes total sense for what it looks like. That said, of course, I'm still like, maybe they should have just gone to jail, and then maybe they would have gotten off on a technicality. Or
it wouldn't have been metaphorical. Then.
That's the TV series, but not the film.
But you wouldn't believe how many people ask us, or ask us, is there going to be a sequel? I'm like,
that would be tough.
what do you think happens?
Supernatural sequel.
I know, but they were like, oh, maybe you bounce, but we're pancakes. We're flat, dead. At the
car is still there.
Car is still there.
I think you see like the engine dropping out even before the freeze
I think it's a
frame.
hubcap.
Oh, is that what it is? I
Yeah,
always
because
wondered.
it had no engine in it.
Oh.
It was
movies.
ricocheted like a
Were you
slingshot.
there when they were doing that?
Yeah, it was like a
it was very
slingshot, and so the car itself, there were about 7 of those cars.
Right.
One burned at the very beginning when we had the fire, before we were even in Utah. And then various ones were made for racing, but then there was one that was very empty. 2 of them went to Ridley's sons. We were very upset about that.
What? Who should have got 2
Yeah.
cars?
Yeah, yeah.
Excuse me?
Yeah.
So
want
that
it
one was
back.
empty.
And did one actually ever go all the way over?
Yeah, the one that was
Wow.
empty.
Oh, wow. Okay.
They slingshotted out.
They flung a couple of cars off.
I thought it was
The
just
fir-
one.
No, because the first one went, and everybody went, because it looked like this is not going to end pretty. It's going to end up upside
It's a
down. or
convertible. It's tough.
something. Yeah, so
With our dummies.
with our dummies.
I'm curious with people, the number one question, is it what happens? What's the sequel? Or what is it that when you find when people approach you to talk specifically about this movie, they want to know?
I've never had
Which
people
one are
want
you?
I'm the one that looked like me. I don't find people asking questions. I find them wanting to tell me their experience of what it was like, who they saw it with, how many times they saw it with.
And everyone calls my girlfriend and I Thelma Louise, and we
Yes.
took a trip together. I was actually in the Grand Canyon 10 years later with my youngest child, just on a road trip that we were taking together, and I went into and I didn't realize that it was the anniversary, and went into the gift shop, and there were a bunch of women that were all on Thelma Louise kind of homages in the Grand Canyon. And of course, you can imagine.
Oh my God!
Were you mobbed?
I wish I was there.
No, they were just. Yes, I wish you had been there.
Oh, that would've been so. We should do it just for
definitely.
fun.
We should.
Can you imagine? You
show
guys
up
just show
at the
up.
Grand Canyon in May. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much. This
Thank
was a
you.
treat.